Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second live session on studying in Canada. And this topic that we're focusing on right now is how you can obtain Canadian permanent residence either before or after you complete your studies in Canada. We are primarily focusing on obtaining your permanent residence in Canada after you would have completed your studies. We had our first live session on this topic on the 26th of February, and it was a very informative video. We've had lots of persons reach out to us. And if you haven't seen that video, I want to encourage you to go and watch that video. It is on our YouTube channel. And if you are considering coming to Canada or applying for a study permit, you would definitely find some useful information in that video. So my name is Kalisha. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an immigration attorney with KYL Law Firm. And as I mentioned in the first live video on this topic, I came to Canada as an international student, so I really understand some of the questions that people have when they're considering coming to Canada as a student. So this is something that is very dear to me and close to my heart. Um, so one of the things I want to mention before I get into talking specifically about the topic is that we've had quite a lot of persons reach out to us since our last session, and they were asking, a number of different questions. What I want to mention is that we are not allowed to provide legal advice via social media. That's just something that applies to lawyers in Canada. So if you message us on via Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp and you're asking, like questions that are very specific to your application, we wouldn't be able to respond to you via text or Facebook Messenger. What you can do is, reach out to us, give us a call via WhatsApp, and we definitely be able to talk to you and determine whether or not we can answer your questions on during the call, or whether you need an assessment. So I just wanted to get that out there because I know a lot of persons reached out to us, and we just had to mention to them that they do need to give us a call so we can talk to them directly. It's just a requirement for lawyers in Canada. So how can you obtain permanent residence in Canada, through as a study permit holder? So one of the things we mentioned some of the things we mentioned in the first live session is that Canada is an in-demand destination for international students, and in 2019 we've had over 400,000 study permits applications that were approved, and there are several reasons for that. Tuition is affordable, the quality of life is good, there are lots of scholarship opportunities, and of course you are able to obtain permanent residence after you complete your studies, providing that you satisfy a number of and you meet the eligibility. So for some of the things that are important if you are thinking about coming to Canada to study is that you want to ensure you're applying to a designated learning institution. You want to ensure that you are also meeting the requirements in the Immigration Act and also the policies that apply specifically to international students. With regards to some of the changes for COVID-19, I just remember that I wanted to address that because I've had quite a lot of questions about it. If you are thinking about coming to about applying for a study permit now, there are some changes that have been made for because of COVID-19. Normally, you're required to be physically in Canada. Um, in order to be eligible for the postgraduate work permit, which I'll talk about shortly. So that's normally you're required to be here. But because of COVID-19, they've made some changes, temporary changes, which allows you to commence your studies online, provided that you would have commenced your studies between spring of um, 2020 and fall of 2021. So you would have had to um, commence your studies between spring 2020, which was when the pandemic started, and fall 2021. So if you started your you have to start your studies between that period of time. Now, as I mentioned, these policies can, it's a temporary policy. It can change at any time. So you want to ensure that you're updated on the changes that are happening. The other what I wanted to mention also in relation to COVID-19 changes is that while you are allowed to start your studies on on online, you must ensure that you would have either been approved for a study permit application. Your study permit application was approved, or you would have started your start applied for that study permit application. So if so you have to ensure that you have a study permit application that is approved, or an application that is pending. That's a better way to put it. So your application, if your application is pending, it has to be approved. So let's say you would have received the offer of admissions from the university and you started your studies online, but you applied for a study permit and that study permit application was rejected, then you'd have to stop your studies, because even if you continue studying online, the time that you're studying would not count towards your study permit, um, the postgraduate work permit. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at some of your questions, and I believe you're not hearing me. We'll try to fix that as soon as possible. My apology for the inconvenience. If you can hear me, just type in the comment section that you can hear me. So I believe that everyone can hear me now. Is the sound good? I believe it's okay. Okay, so I'll continue. I think everyone can hear me. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, great. You can hear me. That's perfect. So, as I was saying, that um, you need to ensure that you've applied for a study permit before you commence your studies. If you're doing it online, if you want that time to count towards the postgraduate work permit. So the other thing that's important with regards to COVID-19 is that you have to ensure you follow the requirements if you are coming to Canada. I'm sorry, we still seem to be having some technical difficulties. We'll try to fix that as soon as possible. Okay, so you're, you can hear me. Okay, I'll continue. My apologies again for the technical difficulty. So one of the other things that we want to ensure that we do if we're traveling to Canada because of the pandemic, um, we want to ensure that we follow the COVID-19 guidelines that were implemented. So you want to ensure that your school has a COVID-19 readiness plan. So your school must have a COVID-19 resident readiness plan. Um, yes, your school that you're applying to must have a COVID-19 resident plan. I believe everyone can hear me now, both on YouTube and Facebook. So as I was saying, for the people that weren't um, hearing me before, is that if you're traveling to Canada, because of the pandemic, you want to ensure that your school has a COVID-19 readiness plan. You want to ensure that you've taken the COVID-19 test and that the result is negative prior to traveling to Canada. You'd have to quarantine for 14 days. That is mandatory, and you will be required to stay in a hotel upon your arrival in Canada if you're coming here by air, which would be most persons. And also, you need to use the Arrive Can app. So those are the COVID-19 the requirements that you have to follow because of COVID-19. One of the other questions that people ask a lot is um, about processing fees and the time of processing for the application. I do want to mention that there is quite a lot of there's a delay rather because of COVID-19. Applications are still being processed. So one of the things that immigration is saying to attorneys and representatives is that they can't give you a processing time, and you shouldn't follow the time that is on the website because it's not your application may not be processed as fast. So though they have a time on the website, don't go by that time. Just know that there's delays and they're trying their best to process the applications as soon as possible. Um, there are also a number of factors that can affect the processing time, including where you're applying from, whether or not your application is complete. Because if immigration has to request something for you or ask for further information, that will delay the processing of your application. And that is one of the reasons you want to ensure that you submit an application that is completed properly. You want to ensure that you consult with a representative who knows what they're doing so that they can complete that application so that there isn't any delays in processing your application. The cost for the study permit is $150. And you will also be required to do your biometrics, which is an additional $85. So in total, the cost for the study permit will be about $235. Um, Another question that we get a lot about studying in Canada is tuition fees. And as I would have mentioned in the first live video, is that tuition fee varies based on one, the province that you're living in, or the province that your where your school is located, because provinces that are more populated, the tuition fee would normally be higher. So I encourage persons who are, tuition fees, if that's an issue, to apply to a school in a province that is not as populated. So, for example, in Alberta, the lowest you would probably find undergraduate fees for is around um, $10,000. The highest is about $30,000. That's for undergraduate studies. For graduate studies, the lowest in Alberta would be about eight to $9,000, and the highest would be around about $18,000. If you apply to a school in British Columbia, for graduate fees, you're looking at between $4,000 to $25,000. For undergraduate fees, you're looking between 17,000 to about $40,000. If you apply to a school, let's say in Newfoundland, for graduate studies, for example, you're looking between $3,000 to $5,000. Now, Newfoundland is a bit cheaper than the other provinces because Newfoundland is not as populated as, for example, Ontario. So tuition fees there would be lower. So you want to ensure that if your tuition fees is an issue for you, that do your research, you look at the different provinces and see, the differences in the tuition fees. We do offer a service whereby we apply to schools for a person. So some persons may be just interested in us completing the study permit application for them, but some persons may want to complete both the study permit application and the application to the school on their behalf. So we do offer that service. We apply to three schools for you, um, based on the program you want to complete, based on the amount of funds that you have available for tuition. We do the work for you to find at least three schools that we believe are suitable based on your needs, and we do that complete that application on your behalf. Of course, you would have to write like your own personal statement. You'd have to do those things. We just ensure that we find schools that are suitable, for you based on your own your unique circumstances and your needs. And as I mentioned in the previous live session, um, every province has a permanent residence program for international students. So every province, as I mentioned, has a sorry, I believe somebody's saying that the audio is not clear. Somebody else is saying that they can hear me. I will continue. Sorry again for the technical difficulties we're experiencing tonight. We're trying to fix it. So as I mentioned, every province has a permanent residence program that is tailored towards international students. So if you study, for example, in Ontario, Ontario has a program that is specifically tailored towards students that study in that province. If you study in New Brunswick, New Brunswick has a program that is tailored specifically for students in that province. And of course, there is, you don't necessarily have to apply directly to the province where you completed your studies, but it's good to know that you do have that option, to apply to specifically to that province. So how exactly would studying in Canada help you obtain permanent residence? Because once you complete your studies in Canada, you get something that is called a postgraduate work permit. And you get that postgraduate work permit once you would have completed your studies at a designated learning institution. Once your studies, you were enrolled as a full-time student for at least 8 months. Once you've completed that program and you get a letter from the school stating that you've successfully completed that program or you're eligible to graduate, then you're able to apply for what is called a postgraduate work permit. The postgraduate work permit is a one-time work permit that you get, and you only get that permit if you've completed at least 8 months full-time studies in Canada. So you don't get that. That's the only way to get that work permit. What that work permit allows you to do is that it allows you to get what is called Canadian work experience. So you're able to, um, the work permit is tied to the length of your studies. The maximum time you get on that work permit is 3 years. So the work permit is generally not longer than 3 years. So it ranges based on the work, the length of the work permit, sorry, ranges based on the length of your studies. There are cases where, for example, somebody would have studied for 1 year, but and they get a work permit for 3 years. That does not always happen, but it there's a possibility that the officer that's reviewing your application may decide to give you 3 years, even though you would have completed a 1 year program. But I just want to mention again that it's really linked to the length of your studies. So you're able to use that work permit. It's an open work permit, meaning that you can work with any employer in Canada. Generally, um, Canadian, once you're coming to Canada as a worker, you generally get what is called a closed work permit, and that work permit restricts you to a specific employer. The postgraduate work permit is an open work permit, which allows you to work any employer. Of course, there's some restrictions on it, but it's still an open work permit. That work permit allows you to get work experience in Canada, which you can then use to apply to the Canadian Experience class. The Canadian Experience class is one of the permanent residence program that is available under the economic stream. So with the Canadian Experience class, you're able to use that um, the work experience that you've gained on your postgraduate work permit to get more points in the express entry pool. So if you've seen our first video, if you haven't, you can go back and watch it. The one that we did on part one of this on February 26th, where I talked about the express entry program. And I said that it's a points-based program where you get points for a number of factors. And you're selected you're entered into a pool with everyone else who's in that express entry pool. So you submit a profile, and let's say, for example, there's 100 persons submitted a profile to the express entry um, pool. You are selected based on your points. So there is a cutoff point every month when they do a selection. So let's say there's 100 people in the pool and they decide that the cutoff point for this month is um 460 points. So if you have above 460 points or above, then it's likely that you'll be selected and invited to apply for permanent residence in Canada. So with the Canadian Experience class, you would have gotten work experience in Canada on your postgraduate work permit, and you get points for your Canadian work experience. So let's say you enter the pool at the end of your studies and you have 450 points when you enter the pool. You start working on your postgraduate work permit, and once you've completed at least 1 year of full-time work, you're able to update your profile in the Express Entry pool, and you will get the additional points for your 1 year work experience in Canada. So that now will make you're more likely to be selected because you have more points in the pool. So that's how you can use a study permit to help you to get permanent residence in Canada. So one, you get your study permit, you complete your studies in Canada, you apply for a postgraduate work permit, you get your work experience on that postgraduate work permit, and you use that experience to give you additional points in the Express Entry pool. You will also get additional points for your Canadian education. So the fact that you have a Canadian diploma or degree or certificate gives you more points in the pool. So you'll be getting points for more points for two different factors, which will put you, you know, ahead of some people who may not have um, Canadian work experience. One of the things that I also want to mention is the age factor. So, like I said, in the Express Entry pool, you get points for a number of different things, and one of those things is your age. So, this program, the Express Entry program in general, targets between really targets persons between 20 to 29. And why I'm saying that is because if you're um, in that range, then you get the most points for your age. If you're outside of that age, you still get points, but of course it's less. So persons who are younger than are 17 years of or less than 17 would not get points. Persons who are 45 years and older do not get points in the Express Entry pool. So ideally you'd want to be between 18 to, I would say, 40. You can still try if you're over 40 years old. There's nothing that says that you can't apply if you're over 40 years old. But just know that the older you are, the less points you get for your age in the Express Entry pool, and likewise in the Canadian Experience class, because the Canadian Experience class comes under the Express Entry pool. So there are things that you can do. Let's say you're 40 years old. There are things that you can do in addition to studying in Canada to get more points in the pool. If you are married, or you have a common law partner, you can also include their details in your profile, and you will get points for that. You can also try applying to a provincial nominee program, which I will talk about in another live session, to get an additional point. If you get additional points, if you're selected under a provincial nominee program, you get an additional 600 points, which is quite a lot. And more than likely, with an additional 600 points, you'll be invited to apply for permanent residence. So just to go over the steps again, one, you apply for a study permit. Um, Once your study permit is approved and you commence your studies, then you complete your program. You have to ensure that you remain a full-time a student, because um there there is some exceptions. For example, if you take like extended breaks from your studies, that can affect, whether or not you'll be given a postgraduate work permit. So you get your study permit. Two, you complete your studies. You get that letter from your school stating that you've successfully completed your program. And three, you apply for your postgraduate work permit. You get Canadian experience with that postgraduate work permit, and then you apply you submit a profile to the Express Entry program, and you're able to get the additional points for your Canadian experience and also um, for your Canadian degree or diploma. And of course, if you're here, there are also things that you can do to improve your score again, such as the um, applying to a provincial nominee program and um, improving for example, your English, um, your score, sorry, on the English test, because you are required to take an English test for the Express Entry program. And um, the higher your score, the more points you get for your language ability. And I know many persons ask, whether or not they're required to complete that test if they're coming from an English speaking question. And the answer is yes. It's mandatory for everyone that's applying through the Express Entry pool. So the Canadian Experience class is only one program under the Express Entry pool, but it's something that you can make use of to get permanent residence in Canada. And why that is also a good ground is because with the Canadian Experience class, you're not required to show settlement funds. So generally, if you're coming to Canada, you have to prove that you have sufficient funds to settle in Canada to make Canada your home. So, for example, you'd have to show, that you have at least, let's say, like $12,000 saved. With the Canadian Experience class, you don't have to show that. So that's another benefit of coming to Canada to study and gaining work experience here, because once you're applying through that Canadian Experience class, you don't have to show settlement funds. If there are any questions that you have, you can type those questions in the comments and I'll try to respond to a few of them. So someone is asking whether or not you need to have a letter of acceptance before applying for a study permit. The answer is yes. So when you're applying for your study permit, there are a number of things that you have to submit, and one of those things is the letter of admissions or acceptance from the school that you're applying to. You have to show proof of funds that you have sufficient funds to pay for your studies in Canada, um, and of course to take care of your living expenses. So another question is whether or not you have to find a school. Yes, you have to do your own research and look for a school that is offering the program that you're interested in studying, is located in a province of your choice, based on your own circumstances. Like I mentioned, whether or not you're able to afford, like the tuition fees. Um, for the schools in that province, you look at the cost of living in that province because it differs from province to province. But as I mentioned, we do offer the option to apply to schools for you. So we do the research based on um, the factors that you submit to us, and we find a school that we believe is suitable for you. When is the best time to apply for a study permit? You should apply as early as possible for your study permit. In the past, like I mentioned, processing time differs based on where you're applying from. So every country has, like they have different processing time for different countries. But 6 months or 6 months, at least 6 months before your program is scheduled to start. So apply as early as you can for that study permit, just in case there's delays, just in case immigration needs to request further information from you, and you need to request documents from some institution. You want to ensure that you apply early enough so that if there are delays, it doesn't affect um, you starting your program, because you don't want to get your study permit approved, after your program starts. And of course, the immigration officer will look at the time that you've applied and the time that your program is supposed to start. They will take that in mind, and that can affect the decision on um your application. So apply as soon as possible. So if you've already completed your undergraduate studies, you can apply to a graduate program in Canada. As I mentioned, there are provinces that offer graduate programs, that are really affordable. For example, if you go to Newfoundland, you can find a graduate program for between three to $4,000. If you're coming to Ontario, of course, it's much more expensive because Ontario is, you know, it's a populate province. You're looking like around between 4,000 to $42,000 for graduate studies in Ontario. If you're coming to Canada and you have family here, somebody's asking if they have family members here, if they still need to show proof of funds. Yes, the answer to that question is yes. So, though you have family here, you can say that you are staying with family, but you still need to show that you'll be able to pay your tuition and um, take care of your living expenses. There are different ways that you can prove that, or you can submit proof to immigration. What I would encourage you to do is to um, reach out to us. You can contact us via WhatsApp, and we use this because most persons that are interested in studying in Canada are outside of Canada, and they can easily call us via WhatsApp. You can also reach us on Facebook and Instagram, but as I mentioned, lawyers in Canada are not allowed to provide legal advice, via Facebook Messenger. So, you can message us on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll give you further information on how you can um, contact. So you can apply to come to Canada. I'm just reading some of the comments and questions that's been asked. You can apply to come to Canada from it's an Irish citizen. Um, you can contact us and let us know exactly what your question is. I'm not sure what exactly you're trying to find out. So reach out to us on WhatsApp. Yes, if you have a toddler or if you have a spouse, you can you can bring your family to Canada with you. So if you're coming to Canada as a student, you're able to apply for your spouse can apply for a work permit, and your children can also study in Canada once your study permit application is approved. So someone is asking about the NUP code. That is something we will talk about in another session. I don't want to get into that right now. So the NUP code is occupations in Canada are characterized based on what is called a NUC code. And um, that is something that is considered when you're applying for permanent residence through the Canadian Experience class or any one of the economic um, programs, in fact. So you have to be based on the program that you're applying to. Your occupation has to fall within a certain code, but we'll get into that in another live. Um, if someone is asking about the NOC code and the open work permit, um, not sure I understand your question, but if you complete your studies in Canada and you're eligible for a postgraduate work permit, the postgraduate work permit is an open work permit. So that is not necessarily, you know, tied to the NOC code. I'm not sure I understand your question, but again, you can reach out to us on WhatsApp and you can also, contact us via Facebook, just that we can't provide legal advice to you via Facebook Messenger. So I believe I've answered all of the questions um, that you've asked. Yes, you can get a letter from if someone is paying paying, for example, your tuition fees, that person can provide with a letter, but they need to also show that they have funds to cover your tuition fees. You can reach us at 647-749-7472, and we can discuss that with you. So I think those are all the questions. Thank you once again for joining this live session. My apology. I know we've had quite a lot of technical difficulties tonight. My apology for that. I hope that you have learned something from this session tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be doing a live session every month, and I will try to cover some of the information that I've presented tonight in another live session, because I know I'm now seeing comments that some persons may have missed something because of the audio. We also be sending emails. We send emails often, just short emails with updates on Canadian immigration and tips on if you're applying to different programs. If you registered for this event, we have your email address. You will be getting emails from us quite often, and we'll try to put some of the things that I've mentioned tonight in a summary and send that out to you. So thanks again for watching. We'll be having another live session next month on the federal skills program. That's another immigration program. So we'll be having a live session on that. Stay connected with us. Thanks again, and I hope to connect with some of you either via WhatsApp or social media.